All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are very excited to have Jada Lindblom from UNH Cooperative Extension joining us today with a presentation on Hampshire tourism development from the ground up.
Thank you, Emily. I'm so glad to be here with you all. I think the Granite State Ambassadors Program is such a cool thing, and I've enjoyed being at some events with some of you in the past, like the Farm Forest and Garden Expo. I'm curious, how many of you feel like you're fairly familiar with UNH Cooperative Extension? You can just raise your hand. I can see most of you right now. Okay, that's pretty good. I figured we'd have a little bit of a better level of knowledge with this group than with some. I mean, some groups I ask that and it's a couple hands, and we sometimes hear that we're New Hampshire's best kept secret, and that's a tagline that we hate. We don't want to be a secret. We want to be able to help as many people in the state as we can and provide useful services and information broadly. So I love chances like this to talk with groups such as you, because you are ambassadors. So hopefully you can also share word of some of the things that we're doing at Extension. So my role with Cooperative Extension is I am the Community and Economic Development Field Specialist in Belknap County. And how that works out basically is that several different counties, not all, but many in the state, do have community and economic development specialists. And we work also with some state specialists, and we're not just working in our counties. We do collaborate statewide, but basically it means that me being in Belknap County, constituents here, have somebody that they can turn to if they have questions related to community and economic development. And I can pull in expertise from other places around the state as needed. My own background is in tourism and outdoor recreation primarily, also with a good amount of historic preservation and like downtown revitalization work, things along those lines. Before I came to UNH, I was completing my Ph.D. at Arizona State University, and I was also a research assistant at Arizona State Center for Sustainable Tourism. So I was doing a lot of research and applied projects related to tourism there. But I love being at Extension now. I grew up in New Hampshire. I'm from Warner in Merrimack County. And I was a 4-H kid back in the day. So it feels like a really nice full circle to be back with Cooperative Extension. So we have 5 different program areas. Again, I mentioned that I'm in community and economic development, but we also have food and agriculture, natural resources, education and 4-H youth development, and health and well-being. Within our community and economic development program area, we have community leadership, economic development, tourism, outdoor recreation, and nature economy as our main areas. So as you can guess, a lot of my work is in that last bullet, that tourism, outdoor recreation, and nature economy section. And that's largely what I'm going to be talking about today, since this is a tourism related talk. But hopefully you'll also see how some of the themes I touch on really kind of weave in and out between some of these different topic areas. So what I will be talking about sort of on the broad level pertains to these main themes. And I think these themes really relate to a lot of our work on the community and economic development team at Extension. Certainly not all that we do, but there's definitely some common themes here throughout. So the first thing is sharing and stewarding New Hampshire history and heritage. And I think as ambassadors, this is a big part of what you do in your roles as well, as you're proud of New Hampshire. You know that we have a lot of awesome things in the state to share with visitors, but also just share with locals, people who live around here too, who might not know about things. And we want to get the word out, but also make sure that these things can last into the future and to be appreciated into the future. Also, I want to touch on addressing direct and indirect impacts. And some of the things I'm going to be talking about today are not as obviously tourism as as it might seem initially, but I hope to kind of draw those connections to how it all comes together. Another thing is recognizing existing local assets and building upon them. Again, we have a lot of really cool things in New Hampshire. We don't have to build from scratch when it comes to tourism. But kind of what happens in a lot of New Hampshire communities is we have places that are really known for tourism. Maybe where there's ski resorts or beaches, or museums that are bringing people. But there's other towns that might not see a lot of visitors, but might want to. Not every town wants a lot of tourists. There's plenty of small communities in New Hampshire that are kind of happy being off the beaten path, but some may be looking for more sources of income, economic development. So there's some interesting ways to look at what exists in a community and try to figure out a potential for the future in terms of tourism and related topics like outdoor recreation. And another thing, which I certainly don't have to lecture you all about because you're all pros at this already, is this idea of being active participants in what we call tourism in New Hampshire. And I'll get into that more later, but I like to think of tourism as being for everyone, not just, considering out-of-state visitors, but really looking at how everybody in the state can benefit from the sort of activities that might be classified as tourism. So that first theme that I mentioned is this idea of sharing and stewarding New Hampshire history and heritage. Does anybody know where this photo is from? That's downtown Laconia. Little first quiz for you. That's the Colonial Theater that was recently renovated and refurbished. And it's a beautiful event venue now to see music events or comedy shows, all types of programming. So several of my project areas relate to historic preservation. I used to work for a statewide preservation nonprofit in Utah as their historic sites manager, which meant there were a couple different properties that I was overseeing for community use, such as music events, weddings, community meetings, and those types of things. But it also gave me a deeper view into what it means to be an advocate for historic preservation and how places can be adaptively reused for the future, and just how places from the past can maintain their relevancy into the future. So I'm really excited to share this about the Barn Trail today. This is a brand new project, so we have not officially launched yet, but we are in the middle of doing research on the first site that will be included in this. And this is one thing that I really hope that we can maintain some good engagement with GSA on, because I think it's so well suited to what your organization does and hopefully to many of your interests as well. But essentially what this is a tourist map of different historic barns around the state that are open to the public. That can mean a lot of different things. It might be that it's a museum that's already used to seeing a lot of visitors. It might be something that's still in agricultural use. It might be a pick your own farm or a farm stand. It could be a historic site, or some on our list are libraries that have been reused in a really cool way for the community. So this tourist map will be hosted on the Visit NH website, and you can look at the map to get a sense of some different historic barn properties around the state that you can either plan a trip itinerary around or plan to just visit if you happen to be in the area. A great way to go down some sort of scenic byways and explore routes that aren't necessarily the main roads to get around the state. And that was really one thing that drew me to this project, is what it means in terms of rural economic development because barns, they're inherently in places that are usually pretty scenic, and that I think a lot of visitors or locals would enjoy exploring and getting to know a little bit better. So by making this resource, this directory of sorts, hopefully we can make that easier for people to find these sorts of experiences. So it's really intended to be an educational resource as well, not just a visitor checklist kind of thing. And how we've structured it is that when people go to one of the properties, or when they're planning their trip, on the website or using QR codes while at the site, they can go to web pages that have more in-depth information about the architectural history of the barn, about how it's been used historically, and about what they can do as visitors today at that site. So, if you're just somebody who wants a little basic information, you can get that. But then if you want that more in-depth look at, the real sort of details of the architecture and of, why this particular barn might be exemplary, there is that information available as well. So a project like this is, going to have most success probably if it's done in a collaborative way. And that's really our mentality at Cooperative Extension in most ways. Being Cooperative Extension, we like to cooperate and collaborate. And I included this long texty list here because I think it really shows how many players are involved in a project like this. And what's been really cool for me is, in being one of the leaders on this project, one of the committee members on it, is that everybody we've reached out to has sort of had the same response of like, hey, that's a cool idea. Like, yeah, let's do that. That would be a great thing for our state. And I think that's such a great sign that you're sort of on to something. You're on the right track with the project when you start to, hear that unanimously with people you talk to. So this project came about following some interactions I had with the New Hampshire Barn Committee, which is a committee organized mostly by the New Hampshire Division of Historical Resources. But in the process, via the Barn Committee, which is already very collaborative and sort of interagency structure, we've brought in a lot of collaborators. So we've got the Division of Travel and Tourism Development, New Hampshire Preservation Alliance, Division of Agriculture, Markets and Food, Granite State Dairy Promotion that actually provided some seed funding for us to kind of kick off this project. And we're excited to work with them because they have the ice cream trail. So if we have the barn trail and they have the ice cream trail, there's some overlap there. There are some sites that qualify for both. And we think it's just both trails together are such a great way to get people excited about agriculture in New Hampshire and get them to check out some new places that they might not normally go to. Also, Champions of New Hampshire Farms, that grant provided some funding for us to get started as well. And, so many businesses and organizations, the different property owners have been generally very receptive and excited to be included on the trail. And then, of course, community members and UNH students and faculty have played roles as well. We have an intern currently who's an undergrad in the history department, who's been doing the majority of our research for us and has been doing an awesome job. And I think it's just really cool to have that additional level of engagement from youth, from students, and from UNH. So some examples of sites that we either are in the works including on the barn trail or hope to include in the near future. Sanborn Mills Farm in Loudon is a great example of a site that has done some really cool things to keep the features on their site operating. They have a historic sawmill there that they do demonstrations with regularly for the public and use for their own use. Different, they're really kind of keeping agricultural heritage alive there and finding ways to share it with the public. I mentioned some libraries earlier. So the Jackson Public Library is one that's on the list. There's a photo I snapped during a sort of, off-peak season time of year, but still a beautiful day in early December. There's also the Gilmanton Library that will be on the list also. Then we have some sites that are still, agricultural. So Riverview Farm in Plainfield is a great place to go pick your own for apples and berries, and has a collection of really nice historic buildings on their farm property. And then there's some sites we have that are, historical society, either owned or managed, such as the Quimby Barn in Sandwich, which also has some great displays inside for people to check out. And then I'm very excited to show you all this. Not too many people have seen this yet, so you're part of an exclusive group. But we have gotten our logo that you'll be starting to see on roadside signs, and also, of course, on any other branded material related to the barn trail. And I'm curious, do any of you recognize this barn? Look familiar? It is based on an actual New Hampshire barn that I think many visitors have been to. I'm not sure if your group has been there on a field trip at any point, but here it is in real life. It is Musterfield Farm in North Sutton. So that's just a really classic image of a barn that we figured would sort of abstract well for use on a logo. Which is why we went with it. And our designer did such a great job, I think, in sort of capturing sort of the special elements of that structure. Musterfield Farm has some great events. They just had their ice day, cutting ice from Keyser Lake, and farm days and, harvest events and stuff. So it's a great property to check out. I want to just throw in a quick mention while we're on the topic of agritourism related things, that we do have some various agritourism related programming that we do at Cooperative Extension, since Cooperative Extension is known by many people for agricultural and farm and garden programming and expertise areas. And then we have those of us that work in the tourism realm. So combining them both makes a lot of sense. One example of this program that we have coming up is being led by Gail McWilliam Jelly, who some of you may know from her time working at the state with the Department of Agriculture, Markets and Food. And she's now working with Extension again, which is really fun. So I'm going to be helping out with this series as well, speaking during one of the sessions. But if you're interested in agritourism, this is aimed at operators, business owners, but there's some good information there, and anybody is welcome to join. And let's see. Oh, good. I just looking at the chat box now. That's awesome. I haven't seen the full schedule yet, so I'm not exactly sure beyond the session that I'm presenting in, but I'm so glad that there's a lot of engagement with that. So let me click this. So it goes, there we go. So kind of moving on to my next theme, but it's very much connected, is really looking at the building blocks of stewardship. And what this really means is, in terms of tourism, is looking at the big picture and considering direct and indirect impacts to tourism. So this is another, I'd say, pretty iconic tourist site in New Hampshire. Anybody know this site here? Castle in the Clouds, yeah, up in Moultonborough. So a really cool historic site to visit. But one that, being in a fairly remote area, they've encountered a lot of challenges getting a sufficient workforce to staff their cafes and, to run their tours and do a lot of the things that are needed to keep this pretty extensive property up and running. And in addition to that, for me, if I look at this building in the landscaping, I see a lot of potential for, ongoing maintenance to be needed. There's all this really elaborate stonework, the masonry needs, the interesting shingles, the woodwork. There's just a lot of different components there, and a lot of areas of specialization that would be needed to keep this looking its best and lasting into the future. And that's really what we know about a lot of these barn properties too. And that was one reason why the barn trail came to be, is the barn committee thought to itself, if we want to save barns from falling into disrepair, and I'm sure we've all seen many historic barns around the state that are dilapidated and are maybe on their last legs, quite literally. And it's sad, it's sad to see that part of our heritage fall away. So, what does it take to make sure that these places can last into the future? And there is a big commitment of, time and money there, and just a dedication to that type of work. But also you need specialized people to be available to help out with these projects. In the case of barns, timber framing can have a lot of complexities. Preserving old wood that might be damaged by different insects, that can be challenging as well. So another project that we have been working on our team from Extension, the Community and Economic Development team, is the Northeast Regional Initiative for the Preservation Trades. And I mentioned that I was going to include some things that might not seem tourism, but when you really think about what tourism means in New Hampshire, they're pretty critical for the success of tourism as well, at least I would argue. So what this research is, or this project is trying to do, is to understand how to get more people working in specialized trades specific to older buildings. So to, helping to preserve historic buildings. That might mean carpentry or masonry or plastering. Really, a lot of different types of trades could have specializations for historic buildings to address the specific needs that those buildings have. So this project has been a really cool thing because it's actually not just New Hampshire. It's we've been serving, for the most part, as consultants to a regional group across the Northeast, comprised of 4 different preservation nonprofits, including New Hampshire Preservation Alliance. So we're trying to figure out how to get more people excited about going into these careers, and also how to make sure people that are either exploring these careers already or already working in them have the tools to succeed, and that they will be retained in these workforces going forward. We embarked on a research process to look at this. And this is something we started earlier in 2022. And we actually are just wrapping up the reporting now. So first, we wanted to understand as much as we could about these workforces to start off. I know, as many people know, just being homeowners, that it's hard to get people to come work on your house right now. There's really big backlogs. And they can pretty much name their price with what they want to charge because there is such demand. So I already sort of knew that, okay, if general contractors are so booked out, I'm imagining that the people who do more specialized work are even more, hard to come by. And that's largely what we found in doing the sort of initial assessment, but also in moving into the more in-depth research. So we did an online survey of tradespeople, as well as others who are engaged with preservation or knowledgeable about these topic areas somehow. And then we also conducted interviews and focus groups. Interviews were mostly with current tradespeople, so we can really understand the experiences they've had and maybe where their training was strongest or weakest, and what they felt like they needed in terms of resources to be able to really thrive in the future. And we also did focus groups focused on workforce development and education. So really homing in on how, these sort of trades can be fostered from an earlier age, maybe. looking at high school or even middle school to see where, what does it take to get people interested about these trades career paths. So just a quick overview of some of our findings from this, and then, what it means for tourism too. So we did find that there are some severe shortages of qualified trades workers. About 91% of survey respondents thought that there were moderate to severe shortages of preservation carpenters, for instance, and other trades as well. 79% was a number we found for materials conservation and plastering. So a lot of perceptions, pretty widespread, of these shortages. And really interestingly, 86% of respondents believe that young people are often discouraged from exploring careers in the trades. And what we started to learn more and more is that trades careers have been stigmatized for quite a while. A lot of youth have been told, if you're going to be successful, you should go get a 4-year college degree, and that's the path to success and to making money. But that's not necessarily true, or it's not necessarily the right fit for every person. There's good money to be made in a lot of trades and a lot of satisfaction that can come as well. Because we also found that 96% of respondents believed that preservation trades can provide interesting, fulfilling, and profitable career paths. That's huge. I think it would be hard to find that level of satisfaction in a lot of other careers. So it seems like this is a really, a cool career path to consider. And also the demand really seems to be there. 75% of respondents believe that demand for the preservation trades is growing. The reality is, we live in a state with a large stock of older buildings, older homes, a lot of the buildings that are so iconic in terms of tourism that really attract visitors to this area are these historic properties that maybe reflect, colonial heritage or that classic New England feel. And, a lot of our buildings are made of materials that aren't necessarily meant to last forever. Wood in a 4-season climate like we have can really take a beating, and there's a lot of upkeep and maintenance that is needed. I just heard a funny story actually just last night from my cousin who lives just over the border in Vermont, but she has an Airbnb at her farm. And she has a Japanese woman staying with her this week. And the woman told her that she had always wanted to go to New England, and that all of her friends, so young Japanese women, are obsessed with New England and really want to visit New England. And I hadn't heard this before, but I thought that was so interesting. And my cousin drove around with her a little bit, and she just was in awe of all these quintessential New England scenes, the farms and the historic homes and the cute little main streets, with the brick buildings. And that really was a big part of why she wanted to visit, is just the landscape and the built environment. So I think it's so important for us to think about how we can make these buildings last into the future. And, sometimes we take these things for granted ourselves. I think, we love our surroundings probably, but, it's easy to think like, oh, that building's normal, whatever. But for others who aren't used to it, it might be actually something pretty cool and special. So one thing that really came out in this research we did is the importance of youth education and immersion with different trades. And many of you may not know this because we didn't really know the extent of this when we started this project. But a lot of high schools and middle schools as well have cut shop programs. Shop and home ec don't necessarily exist anymore. I was surprised to hear that. I thought it was still sort of a fundamental part of the youth educational experience. But because of budget or time constraints or whatever it might be, a lot of schools do not have shop or home ec. So kids are missing an opportunity to be exposed to these hands-on crafts, to have that fundamental knowledge of working with wood or with metal. And that really, impacts how they might start to think about different careers going forward, but also the basic skill set they would have for being able to succeed in those careers early on. So career and technical education centers are one way that high schools in New Hampshire can help to fill these voids, these educational voids. And a lot of CTE centers have really done a wonderful job of providing different areas of learning to students and different exposure to different career paths. This photo was taken in Hudson at the Palmer CTE Center, where they have some really cool facilities right now across a lot of different professional areas. So if you want to hear more about this research, you will have a chance in just about 1 month. We don't have the registration open quite yet, but we will. So March 28th, 3:30 p.m., we will have a webinar sharing more of our findings from this research. And we'll also be releasing our report, which is pretty extensive. It's over 50 pages long on this topic with a lot more findings. A related project that some of my colleagues participated in is the Youth Retention Initiative in New Hampshire. And this is something that impacts a lot of different fields. You know, we really have, we need more young people to stay in the state or to come to the state in order to fill jobs and to make sure that, our society is sustainable going forward, that the systems we have in place will continue to thrive, whether it's education or healthcare, whatever it is. We need young people to be excited about staying in New Hampshire. So this research it found some similar things to our preservation trades project in terms of these narratives about four-year college degrees and how, that's supposed to be what successful youth go on to do, and how that really might not be the best fit for everybody, and that there can be a lot of pride and a lot of intellectual stimulation in going into fields that may not require four-year degrees. So also, it's not too surprising, but a lot of youth in New Hampshire feel temptation to move to cities, whether that's to Boston for a few years or to New York or somewhere else totally different. I can relate to this. As I said, I grew up in Warner, which only had a couple thousand people when I grew up, and ended up going to school in right outside of Los Angeles. I just wanted something totally different. I wanted the cultural experiences and, just all of this stuff that I didn't have growing up. But at a certain point, that was good for when it was good. But then you feel the pull, hopefully, to come back to all the great things we have here in New Hampshire. So that's something that we can think about. How can New Hampshire cities provide some of the things that young people want? They might not be big cities, but they might still have some of the education and offerings, or entertainment and offerings that are appealing to young people. So it is important to kind of think about, if young people are spreading their wings and going somewhere else, is it temporary? Is it long-term? What might be the pull factors to bring them back to New Hampshire sooner, maybe? For me, it took about 20 years to come back here. So I'm not the best example for that. I'm not sure what would have made me come back here sooner, but I did when it felt right, and I'm glad to be here now. So one thing that I think is really important in connecting this back to tourism, it's not just about having enough of a workforce in tourism and hospitality jobs, which is very important, but also, all of these things we've been talking about, with how to appreciate New Hampshire's offerings, how to market and brand what we have and sort of package it to make things available for more people. It matters for youth too, how we're advertising New Hampshire, the messages we have about our state matter internally also. And if youth realize that there's a lot of amazing outdoor recreation opportunities, some really cool things to do in terms of arts and culture and entertainment, that might be a strong pitch to help them stay here or to come back sooner. So the same strategies we use to attract visitors can be so important for retention also. So along those lines, I mentioned outdoor recreation just now, and that's a huge thing in terms of tourism promotion. At the state level, the State Division of Travel and Tourism Development often finds in their research that it's outdoor recreation that really resonates strongest with consumers when they do consumer research. So they really, rely on that a lot. And we have so much to offer here because we have seacoast, we have mountains, we have lakes, we really have it all in one small package. And you can experience a lot in a relatively short amount of time as a visitor or a resident in New Hampshire. So a lot of our work at Extension has to do with recognizing things that are already here in the state that are great, but building upon them, making them more accessible to more people. So one program we have to hopefully help to accomplish this is the Downtowns and Trails program. And what this hopes to do is to build stronger connections between trails that exist in a community or that are being developed in a community and the downtown or Main Street business communities. So that might mean strengthening like trailheads and signage and like the physical infrastructure that helps people wayfind or to know what's where. Or, it might mean, developing better knowledge amongst community members so that the people that are involved with trail development are also involved with the downtown business community and just really fostering more synchronicity between them. So this project has been done so far in Bristol, Ossipee, and Keene, and they're currently in Hopkinton working in Kentucky Village. So it's a very collaborative process. It's basically a community engagement program with each of these communities. So it's not Extension coming in and doing everything and telling them what to do, but it's working with the community members to help visualize how to strengthen these connections between downtowns and trails. And I will say, if any of you are particularly interested in this side of Extension's work, my colleague Shannon Rogers is the one that generally leads these efforts. So you can reach out to her, and I just included her email address there too, or I could always direct you that way also. I was lucky to work on the Keene project and had a great time there, and I hope to do some more downtowns and trails programs going forward. So also another thing that Shannon was involved with, along with the Department of Transportation and New Hampshire State Parks and some outside consultants, is the recent New Hampshire Rail Trail study and plan. And there is a full report that you can read online if you're interested in this. But there's a lot of exciting stuff happening around this state in terms of rail trail development. Really, I mean, all through the state, you can find rail trails. And many, are still in the work. So they're trying to build connections between areas where they're not quite joining. But because there's all this momentum, the state wanted to better understand their potential and their economic impacts. And they did find some interesting things. Currently, it's mostly locals that use rail trails. So only about 15% of rail trail traffic was from visitors. So there's a lot of potential there to get more visitors knowledgeable and interested in using rail trails. And that's particularly important in terms of economic development because it's found that visitors spend about 3 times as much as residents each time they visit a rail trail. And it makes sense when you think about it. They might be staying somewhere in the area, so paying for lodging, but they might be more likely to try to make this into an experience by, maybe biking somewhere where they can, go to a brew pub or stop at a cafe and make it sort of a full day thing rather than just popping out for an after work bike ride or a dog walk or a stroller walk or something like that. So getting visitors knowledgeable about these trails could have really important impacts in terms of rural economic development through a lot of New Hampshire communities. What the study also found is that at the current state of affairs, the total annual economic contribution of rail trail users in the state is over 18 million. So already a strong number to start with, but clearly there's potential to grow that number as well. So another related project having to do with these connections between communities is something that I've been really involved with in Northfield, so the Northfield and Tilton areas, which is Foothills Foundation. And this is it's a nonprofit organization that basically emerged as an offshoot from some of Northfield's economic development committee work, because several community members who were on this economic committee were really coming from the outdoor recreation world, either through Highland Mountain Bike Park, or were just really interested in that sort of potential path for economic development for the region. And basically what their argument is that like there's already so much great stuff in this region and a lot of momentum. The Whitewater Kayaking Park in Franklin was being developed around this time, and Highland Mountain Bike Park was seeing more and more visitors than ever before. And there's a lot of other trail systems like Franklin Falls and Great Gaines. So, there's already so many things in the region to attract visitors in terms of outdoor recreation development. But it was a little bit fragmented, and there seemed to be potential to really bring it into focus how this could be a driver in terms of the economy in this region. So Highland Mountain Bike Park, has anybody been there? Maybe a couple have. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's really a world-class mountain biking venue tucked into the back roads of Northfield, New Hampshire. But they host a lot of big events there, like Red Bull events, where top riders from around the world will come to compete. It's easy for somebody who comes there to look at these trails and feel a little intimidated, right? I'm a mountain biker, but you won't find me launching off these jumps here. But there actually are a lot of trails at Highland, good for different abilities. But there was also a recognition from some of the people who are part of this Foothills effort, who come from Highlands, work there at Highland, that, if there were more ways for beginners or for kids to get involved with biking through, more entry-level trails, it's going to be better for everybody in terms of health, but also, in terms of having even more people that are interested in not just riding at Highland, but working at Highland, because it's another place that really depends upon having a strong workforce. So Foothills worked with some outside consultants from the SE group about a year ago and tried to identify key areas where connections would be helpful. And these connections are literal in terms of building trails, but also it's that same idea that I mentioned with Downtowns and Trails program of connecting people, getting people to know what each other are doing and trying to build collaborations so that the idea that a rising tide lifts all boats, So down here, you can see Highland Mountain Bike Park in the sort of lower right-hand corner. It really is out in the middle of the woods in Northfield, but the organization is currently working on building a connection roughly along the lines of these arrows into Northfield and Tilton, so that visitors to the area, they could, stay in Tilton, ride their bike to the mountain bike park, but also, hop on the Winnie River Trail, or get over to the rail trail and have like a bike-based or walking or hiking-based experience where you don't have to depend upon a car, but you have this network of places to go. There's already some people that work at Highland or that ride at Highland who are able to get there from town or from other parts of the area on trails because of existing mountain bike trails or snowmobile trails. So there's already, precedent for this type of trail development to happen. And it's just an exciting way to think about how these different sites like Franklin Falls and Highland, Great Gaines, they don't have to be competing places for visitors to go. They can actually be part of the same regional package of offerings to really make it a more compelling place for visitors to visit, but also for residents to want to live and to live, healthy, active lifestyles. I mentioned that a trail is already being built. So this is that first trail being constructed. So because it's machine built, it's going to be a very smooth, more beginner-friendly mountain biking trail, which is really exciting because if you've been out on trails in New Hampshire, there's a lot of roots and ruts and rocks to get around. So having a machine-built trail that goes over some sort of sandy soil can be really a fun, nice experience. So Foothills, another part of the mission is to get people in the area knowledgeable about the existing trail assets and excited about biking, and just to get more partnerships between these different trails organizations that already exist. So this is an example of some community engagement work from the New England Coffee Festival in Laconia that was last May. We had an extension booth that was sort of featuring Foothills Foundation. That's my summer intern, Troy. And then Highland Mountain Bike Park, because they've been crucial collaborators and partners on this, they brought this portable pump track so that kids could come by and try riding a mountain bike on this really cool course. So that was a really fun thing. And yeah, it was great to start getting the word out in the community some more about these regional efforts. And along those lines, I wanted to throw in a slide here about the New England Coffee Festival, because I thought to myself, I couldn't resist a pun. If I titled this presentation, New Hampshire Tourism from the Ground Up, I had to include New Hampshire Tourism from the Grounds Up. So Coffee Festival, it's a really cool event. It's going into its second year this May. And it's aimed at coffee industry professionals, like people that are coffee roasters or run coffee shops or cafes or distribution companies, but it's also aimed at anyone who's interested in coffee, specialty coffee, as well as just anyone in the community or any visitors who want to come and just enjoy like a community festival atmosphere. So the previous slide, this one was at a side event that was called the Outdoor Adventure Experience, where a lot of different outdoor recreation and like conservation related groups were there to, talk about their business or organization and to provide some fun interactive experiences for visitors. So the Coffee Festival has been a great one for me to be involved with, because the organizers really kind of share UNH Extension's mission of, how can you do something that has these, other benefits, where it's not just about having a festival about coffee, it's about economic development more broadly. It's about, creating fun things for locals to do, to get out and explore and, have some educational experiences too, maybe. So they really wanted to put on an event that wasn't just about coffee, but was also about highlighting all of the amazing things that are available for people to do in the region, and sort of be a hub of just, celebrating downtown Laconia and celebrating central New Hampshire for all of its really cool outdoor offerings as well. So I'm almost done here, but I wanted to end on this note. I recently gave a talk at the Central New Hampshire Chamber of Commerce event that had, a lot of similarities to this presentation, and that's how Emily and Kelly got in touch about this. And I ended on this sort of note there too, because it's one line I really like to reiterate, which is this idea of re-envisioning tourism as a mentality. As a tourism researcher, we're often forced to define tourists really narrowly. Like maybe you have to be somebody who's going somewhere more than 50 miles away from your home, or maybe you're staying overnight. There's a lot of different definitions. And for me, I don't love those, to be honest. They serve their purpose, they have utility, but I like to think of tourism as a mentality, going out to tour, to see what's out there, to experience things and to interact. That's something that anybody can do. It doesn't matter if you're going a quarter mile from your house or 3,000 miles from your house. You can have those same enriching experiences of immersion and be introduced to things you may not have been otherwise. So this is a photo from, my husband and I last summer thought, hey, we should go camp on one of the islands on Squam Lakes. Squam Lake. We hadn't done that before, but heard it was cool. it's just one of those things that you could easily keep saying year after year, we'll do that next year. The reservations are booked up this year. We'll do it next year. But sometimes it's just a matter of saying, nope, this is a priority. We are going to go be tourists in our own backyard. And we had an awesome time. Of course we did, because it's canoeing in a beautiful lake. So this idea of sort of playing tourist is actually what I based my dissertation research on. But I was looking at a post-war city in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and how if people there participate in more tourist-oriented activities, how that might actually help to foster greater collective pride in a city that's largely known for being war-torn and still has really strong social divisions between its ethno-cultural populations. And I found that there's some strong, strong precedent there to really consider how tourism activities can make people excited about their own region, and to kind of break down some of those barriers that might exist between different populations and create more understanding and empathy between people. So I think tourism is about way more than just the economic bottom line. So one thing I want to sort of encourage you all to do is, and I know you already do, but, to get out and explore, take advantage of those opportunities. Like with trails, there are so many trails that are popping up around the state, and many are being made to be more accessible, like with ADA guidelines. This is one I happened upon up north. And, even if it's the off season, even if it's stick season and it's not your normal time to get outside, take advantage of those sunny moments to explore some new places in New Hampshire and see what you find. Maybe this is a matter of, deciding to pick your own blueberries instead of buying them at the store, but supporting some of these cool agriculture and agritourism businesses that exist. Or it might be a matter of just throwing all your kids in the car. My kids are 2 dogs. Throwing the grandkids in the car, whatever it might be, and going to explore, see what you find if you just sort of are open to experiences, and to stopping on a whim at the side of the road when a cafe or some attraction seems, intriguing to you. I think that there's just so much that our state can offer down these back roads, down these little trails. It's just so much potential within a relatively small state to really have some cool experiences in terms of the outdoors and, cultural heritage and all different things. So that brings me to the end. I do have my email here if any of you would like to follow up with any questions or comments or conversation. But with that, I will stop sharing, and I welcome any questions or comments.
Jada, do you know when the Barn Trail will officially open?
Good question. Yes, it's a little bit to be determined, but I think what we're going to try to do is have a pilot launch of like the first 5 to 10 sites that are ready to go, aiming to have it ready by the summer season. But for you all, and sort of communicating this to others, definitely important to let people know that like the trail will be much more than 5 to 10 sites. I mean, we currently have a list of about 40 properties that we want to include, and that list is growing by the day pretty much. But I think we're going to have sort of some drafts ready like late May, and then we're hoping that by, mid-June, hopefully some stuff will be posted on the website. I know these things always kind of get delayed or end up on different schedules, so I don't want to make any promises, but sometime this summer you can expect to see at least that pilot launch of a few really awesome sites intentionally in different parts of the state that are ready to welcome.
Thank you.
Are you considering?
Will you include the Budweiser stable on your barn list? Your barn
in Merrimack.
In Merrimack.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what is on it. I think that is on the list. It hasn't been one that we've worked on so far. And on the committee, there are other people that know like everything about every barn in the state. And I'm not that person. I'm more the person that's coming in from the like how to communicate and how to like share the word about these tourist sites. But I could check on that. And I mean, pretty much any site, the eligibility requirements is that it has to be an historic barn that is open to the public. That's pretty broad. So I would think so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Are you considering weather vanes on the barn too?
Yeah, so different architectural features, but whatever is notable about that site will, be something that's included. So we won't probably have like a specific, guide to weather vanes, although we could, and I do like that idea. That could be a cool thing. Yeah, I think as it's been so far from the sites I've seen written up so far, it's, whatever stands out about the site and whatever sort of archival information we have about the different sites is what we are including in the write-ups. But I think once we have more sites included and we start to see some commonalities or some sort of groupings between the sites, I think there's going to be some cool opportunities to maybe do like a subset tour. And maybe that could be like, notable weather vanes or notable, whatever it might be, different features of certain barns. So that's a good question.
We attended a presentation in New Hampton by a gentleman that specialized.
I'm having a hard time hearing you. Can you maybe get a little closer to
we attended a presentation at our Gordon Nash Library, and the man did it on weather vanes, and it was, yeah. I think he named it like look up. So we were just looking straight ahead, but he said wherever you go, look up. And we have noticed some beautiful weather vanes now that we've never noticed before.
That's awesome. I love that idea. And it's so true with, I think with different aspects of, historic architectural appreciation. Once you're cued into paying attention to something, you can never see the world the same again. Right. And that's how it was for me after I worked for the preservation nonprofit in Utah. I always considered myself somebody who appreciated historic buildings. But it wasn't until I worked there that, like, literally, I can't go anywhere and see things the same as I used to, because now I'm paying attention to all of these different details, to like how the materials that were used reflect, what was available at the time in that region, and what different stylings tell you about different like European influences in terms of colonial history or immigrant history. There's so many elements of it that once you have that educational moment. It really opens up a new world of understanding and appreciation. So that's what we're hoping to achieve with the barn trail. And I love that idea of looking up as one way of doing that. Thank you.
We have a comment in the chat, or a question. How do you see the GSAs involved with the barn trail?
Great question. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you all when we start off, and I forgot to, is just, what parts of the state you're all coming from. It sounds like, based on our conversations about the weather, that you're really all around the state, right? Yeah. Yes. Well, and we've very intentionally been including properties on the barn trail that are in every different part of the state, if we can, please. So having you all in different areas could be really helpful. Definitely for helping to get the word out about it once it starts up. But I think I would love to do some maybe special tour days because we do have some sort of grouped itineraries, such as around Concord. We have a few different sites that are all pretty easily accessible. Working with you all because you know about tourism already and you've had a lot of experiences, interfacing with visitors. We might be able to get some great information of just about how we can best communicate things and make things best understood and enjoyed by other visitors as well. So I think both in terms of promotion, but also in terms of, as we move forward with developing this, I think there could be a lot of ways we could work together. But I'd also be interested to know how you all might see your engagement. If there are certain ways, if you heard about this project or others and think, ooh, I hope we can do this through GSA, let me know. I would love to work with, Kelly and Emily on this going forward too. Oh, I'm just reading the chat now too. Yeah,
and we'll be staying in touch as well between our two organizations to further collaborate, and we'll be sure to let everybody know when there's more information about the barn trails dates.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely be keeping up those lines of communication and hoping to stay involved. I see the question too about a brochure. We do hope to do a print brochure. We're starting off just by trying to get some solid info online, and then we hope to do a brochure that sort of shows the map overview of the state, and then with the QR codes printed in it, so that people could find the longer write-ups. You have they're essentially equivalent of 1 to 2 page summaries of the sites. So that, people that just want the quick overview can have a brochure or that initial web page, and people that want the more in-depth information can easily locate that as well. Yeah. Anything else?
I'm really happy that you're focusing on preservation. I think too often in our travel and tourism discussions, we focus on recreation and not the downtowns that add the component of the overnight stay or the all-day experience for people who may not want to be outdoors all day or who are physically unable to be outside all day. So yay, you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And really, you've kind of just summarized the conversation we had early stages with the Barn Committee, because we had been talking about how can we get more of the state tourism materials to feature historic properties and barns in particular, aspects of agricultural heritage. And that's really how this idea came across. And for me, as I see it, I'm very much in the outdoor recreation world as well, but I don't see them as being opposing things within the tourism realm. It's really about creating these really, robust and well-rounded tourism experiences, so that a visitor can come and, maybe they're riding mountain bike trails in the morning, but by the afternoon, they're having a burger and a beer at, a brewery that's in a historic barn property. And while they're waiting for that burger to arrive, they're reading on their, they're on their smartphone about the history of that site. It's about creating these experiences that really help to show everything that New Hampshire offers, not just one sort of single lane of what New Hampshire has to offer.
And it conveys the uniqueness of our built environment that is really one of the things that people do come to see, especially people from outside the region. So good job.
Thank you. Oh, I like this box picnic idea. Yeah, I love that. Thinking about which sites might have a good lawn or some picnic tables to settle down on. And actually, I love that you bring up this idea in the chat also, because this is something we've been talking about with one of our mountain bike projects with Foothills Foundation, because Tilton has some great town parks. And we've been trying to think about how we can get more riders to go grab a to-go lunch at one of the Main Street restaurants in Tilton, and then go head to one of the parks, like Tilton Island Park, once it reopens. And have a mountain biking break there in the park while also supporting a local business. So there's a lot of opportunities in our small towns around New Hampshire to give people this sort of full package experience of the best that it has to offer. And yes, Throwback Brewery is on our list. And I think our intern is about to head there in a couple weeks. Great idea.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jada. This was wonderful. And we'll be sure to share your email. I know you shared it in the slide. We'll be sure to pass it along to everybody. So if anybody has any other questions, or like I said, we'll be in touch so that we can share the dates on the barn trail and figure out how we can best collaborate going forward.
That would be awesome. It's been great to talk with you all today. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.